Oh, who would be a Wolves fan, eh?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Wolves Fancast. We are here to review Wolves 0, Newcastle 0 at a very wet Molineux this afternoon. And for those of you there, I'm sure you'll understand it wasn't the best getting in and out of the ground today. Bit soggy for everyone, although not as cold as it has been. I'm joined in this latest episode by Ed. Hi, Ed. How you doing?
Evening all. Yeah, not too bad, thanks, mate.
Good man. And Jafo, how you doing, sir?
A little cold and tired in the mountains.
Well, I can't address that one for you, mate. But we certainly let's try and warm you up with a bit of Wolves talk. Let's see if we can get that going for today. Hello to everyone in the chat. Good to see so many of you in already. Thank you for all your comments and for your feedback as well. More than happy for you to keep sending us comments through, and we'll try and get as many of those involved in the conversation as we go today. Right, so Wolves 0, Newcastle 0. Not one for the purists, and maybe you would say not one for the neutrals today, but nevertheless, in my opinion, a very battling, hard-fought point and a clean sheet as well, which, let's be honest, has been in rare supply this season. So that's where we are. Thoughts, Ed, on that?
Initial
thoughts, sorry.
It's one of those, isn't it, where that cliche of if you'd have offered me this at 1:30 and not got wet getting to and from the ground, then I'd have taken it and I'd move off from there. But and especially I think it might have actually been Jafo in the group chat that actually said if we look at our form against Newcastle, mini bogey team, we'll take the point and we remain unbeaten in 2026.
We do indeed. Jafo, initial thoughts on the results and the performance before we get into a bit more detail?
Yeah, it's battling performances. Again, it's becoming a theme of Rob Edwards' tenure as Wolves manager, and especially 2026. Just the nature of the Wolves' performances have been based on sort of a good defensive setup and wanting to build from the back. And I think if we're going to have any sort of progress going into the rest of this year and next season, is we've got to focus on keeping clean sheets, and today was another step forward in doing that and achieving what we need to do.
So based on that, would you have seen this being a scenario that if we'd have played this game before Christmas, we would have probably lost the game, and that's the result? That's part of the.
It would have been 4-5-0 probably. It would have just the nature of the way that it's set up.
Yeah, the Forest game comes to mind. The Forest were awful. They were worse than Newcastle were today.
Yeah,
and came away 2-0 winners, and we didn't land a punch. I think someone in the comments has mentioned, we're bloody in noses. We wouldn't have landed a punch in that with a performance like we put up against Nottingham Forest.
Yeah, I think there's a resiliency there now, which we just didn't have. The other one that I'm thinking of is things like Burnley at home as well, where we were defensively woeful. Yeah, we did score a couple of goals that day, but nevertheless we were abject at the back and obviously conceding late as well. So yeah, 100%. Right, let's have a quick look at the team. So this is the team that Rob set out. So the change really from since the last Premier League fixture, obviously I'll put the Shrewsbury team to one side. Obviously was Andre coming in for Arias, who I don't think had done a lot wrong. I know the whole team were slightly off the pace in the Everton away fixture, but that was the main change. Is that what you were expected to see, Ed, or would you have stayed as you were, or would you have gone further with the changes?
I think personally I would have stayed as you were.
Yeah.
I can see why Gorgeous Rob has done what he's done, because Newcastle's strength is in that midfield, isn't it? Of Joel Linton, Tonali, and Bruno Guimaraes, who's vastly becoming as unpopular in my eyes as Mikel Arteta. After watching him moan and mope around the pitch all day today. But I think that's why we've gone to match them in midfield, haven't we? And I think it might have been Dan or someone mentioned on the preview show, there's also maybe a little bit in there for Andre and Joao to go up against their literal Brazilian national team rivals and maybe
Yeah.
match them 2 for 2 and see who comes out on top. That might be something for Carlo and his cronies to have a look at.
Yeah. Your thoughts, Jafar, on the team lineup? Went as expected, or would you have made some changes to that lineup based on what we've seen previously?
Yeah, I mean, probably as expected, but I just don't see the point in bringing Andre in. I'm a massive fan of him, but I've said for a long time now that he is the reason why we're struggling, because he's very much a one-trick pony. He's very, very good at what he does. He's definitely a one-trick pony, and it hinders. And I think we'll get on to talking about Joao Gomez in a little bit, but I think it hinders Joao Gomez, and I think Andre works well in a system where he's got everything around him, and I think, okay, yeah, it makes sense to bring him into combat, but really, I don't think it was that much needed. And I think John Arias offered a lot more in the 30 minutes that he was on the pitch than Andre really did. And I think Andre stunted a lot of attacks in the game. I think he slowed it down too much, and I think going forward, maybe it might not be the right option.
So just building on that point, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, do you feel that this was probably a team set up not to lose as a team set up to win then, based on what you've just said, that actually this is a team that might be better suited away from home? Or is it just because he's looked at the Newcastle, looked at the midfield and gone, I need to try and match them up like Ed said? What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's always the thing of, you've got to look at Newcastle and the form that they've hit. I mean, they lost up in the week to Man City in the cup, but that doesn't really, it's a bit of a misnomer. Before that, they've won 3-4 games easily in the league, back to back. So you're trying to play against the form team and putting a lot of pressure on players who are just starting to gel together and work together. But my issue is that when people are playing well and people start to play well, like John Arias has done, and he starts to find a bit of form, to take him out the side at that point is just, it's counterintuitive, because Andre exactly wasn't pulling up trees before he was taken out the side. So I think Robert was probably, it's a sensible decision if you're being like ultra negative and you're playing in that of not wanting to lose. But we're not at the point where we need to do that. We just need to play with freedom. So I think it's probably the wrong decision. And he should be looking to just win games now, because we're chasing targets and we're just trying to put a bit of positivity for the end of the season.
I think, sorry, Greg, just to jump in to build on
that. I was going to bring you in anyway. Go for it.
So I think something you just mentioned there, Jafar, build on, is John Arias has sort of, we all know he didn't have much of a pre-season because we got him from the Club World Cup and stuff. And I think you're right, when he starts to hit some form, and we'll take the Shrewsbury game with a pinch of salt, that they came to enjoy their day out, and as teams from League Two would do. But I think not letting him continue in the vein of form that he's in, because he obviously was playing well previous to the Shrewsbury game as well, of course, getting the goal against West Ham. It's harder for him to come back in and carry on that form when you have to get up to speed with the game. Whereas someone like Andre, and even to an extent Joao Gomez, they can come off the bench to shore up a game, and you don't need to necessarily have the same kind of momentum with you to do that. I think to be an attacking player, I think we should be starting them from the start and seeing where we are at halftime or 60 minutes to go. Do we need to carry on plugging here, or do we actually need to now shore up because we're where we are? I think Andre or Joao Gomez off the bench is an easier job than someone like Arias.
Yeah. It's definitely easier to slow down a game than bring the pace up.
Yeah.
And that, when you're seeing out a game, for a player to come in, they dictate the tempo. Whereas with John Arias, you're coming off the bench to try and pick the game up. You've got to pick up not just yourself, you've got to pick up 4 or 5 players around you. And that's the difference, is setting the energy into those individuals is a lot harder than, as Ed says, sort of bringing somebody on who can hold the ball a couple of seconds long, take time with some passes and be a little bit more, reserved in the play. It's a no-brainer, really.
So just building on that point, and I'll reflect on it now and feed it back to you guys. Because one of the things is, Jafar, you're absolutely right, Newcastle have had a decent run of results. But if you look at their general Premier League away form, it's pretty horrific. So they've had a decent few running games, and I think that may have tempted Rob to go the way it's gone. But if you look at Newcastle's away, their home form is great, normally is. Their away form is been pretty awful, really. It's nowhere near where they are generally, and it's kind of dragging them down. And I think going with such a, let's say, a less positive option is what we're kind of classifying it here. Did that really set the tone going into the start of the game, do you think? And I'll start with you, Ed, and then Jafo, I'll get you to follow on that.
Yeah, it does. I think we are still at times, even though we are much improved in the last 4 to 5 weeks, we are still playing as the team that are 20th in the league. And I think sometimes we're playing the situation rather than the team again that we are. Either we are now, or the team that we're playing. We're playing the fact that we are. The first goal is to try and get to this, better than Derby. And I think we are playing our situation rather than playing for where we want to be. And I think if we were even just 19th and, not cut adrift like we are at the minute, you probably would have carried on with Arias. But because we're not, the situation dictates, we need a point. We need something out of this. We're at home. We can't let this go. We need to keep this momentum building. Whereas I think if we are 19th, 18th, we probably are going, we are 2 wins away from getting out of the stuck. So I think we're playing our situation at the minute. And I think we'll talk about the subs later, but I think the subs are very similar to that as well. I think that's the reason why.
Yeah. So, Jafar, I've just brought up the team lineups. I mean, so you can see obviously Newcastle go with their 4-3-3. We know that as pretty, to be honest, that's been pretty consistent, to be honest, since I've completely forgot the manager's name now. Isn't that embarrassing? Since the Newcastle have had the manager.
Eddie Howe.
There we go. Thank you. Bloody hell. So, but yeah, they've operated with that. They operate with the wingers, the 4-3-3. And I think we've talked about it was that looking at that midfield three that have been there for a period of time, consistent, know each other very well in terms of Jolinton, Tonali, Guimarães. There we go. So yeah. So look, kind of how we expected. Looking at back three, pretty much picked itself. Jafo.
I think.
Yeah.
Santi Bueno, I think, was one of the unluckiest men in football when Robbie Edwards came in and he found himself going in and out of the side, because really the back end of the Vitor Pereira's tenureship and premiership here, Ladislav Krejci and Santi Bueno were the only shining lights of the end of his reign, and Bueno, I think he suffers with being a nice guy, but he's a fantastically astute defender and very clever, and he knows when to be aggressive. He knows when to step in and take the ball. He does make mistakes, but that's why he's playing for Wolves, and that's why he's not playing for Man United, Man City, and or a big team in Spain. Yeah. He's going to be a sort of 7 out of 10 player as an average. He's not going to be an 8-9 player. And the other one, and I know we'd like to talk about him in more detail, but yes, Mosquera, he's building now what he needs to do. He's at an age now, I believe he's over 25 now. He's had several loans away from Molineux, and in current years he's played different positions, played right back, played centre back. But now the biggest concern is him getting a good run of games, him not getting red cards, not getting injured, and showing consistency. And that's what we're sort of seeing from these 3 individuals, is we are seeing a nice consistent run of form, and it's that balance. And I think with Santi Bueno and with Yerson Mosquera, it's that balance of understanding when to be aggressive, when to be sort of standoffish. And we're seeing qualities now from Yerson Mosquera that we haven't seen in previous years. And he's enigmatic in the way that he plays football. He defends well, but he's got sort of what João Gomez has, what Diogo Jota had. It's that little bit of just energy, enthusiasm when they play football, that it means that he can run with the ball 70, 80 yards up the pitch. We had that moment in the first half where he picks up the ball at the edge of the box and he run pretty much the full length of the pitch. And if he had a little bit more luck, the ball had bounced to him. He might have had a tap in against Pope. In fact, Pope hadn't stepped in. But we're seeing very, very, very good quality and consistency from somebody who needs to show it now in the moment in his career, and it's very, very good to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good overview. Just wholeheartedly agree. Do you think as well, Ed, that actually this having the three centre halves gives Mosquera a bit more license and ability to do those kind of, those what the fans really react to, those driving runs, the ability to kind of push forward and carry the ball and the team literally up the pitch as a result of that, with his energy and with his bursts. Whereas I think maybe in a 4 he wouldn't have such luxury or ability to do that, because he would create such a much bigger gap in the kind of defence. Your thoughts on Mosquera's performance today?
Yeah, and I've ultimately always rallied against these people that think that 3 at the back means that you can't play attacking football. I wholeheartedly disagree with that. I think you just need to have the setup around them. And I think, was it Chelsea last year at home, that crazy game? We had that one point where he'd gone mad and gone up the pitch. So had Totti, so had Ait-Nouri, and we had no one at the back, and they scored on the break from a corner, wasn't it? When we literally had no defenders. So with that 3 at the back, and in particular with someone like Santi Bueno and Krejci, who are older heads than they have on their heads, so I think we can have one absolute nutcase that like Mosquera is, because fans love it as well, don't they? That's the other thing. And his enthusiasm is infectious. His enthusiasm, I think Jafo said it brilliantly, is what we had with João Gomes, especially over the last sort of 2 or 3 years, of that person in the midfield, that person in the team that's like, okay, he's me, but he's really good at football. Like, he's really happy to be here. He's happy to ply his trade, and he will have a shot. He will try and cross the ball in, because what's the worst that can happen? And maybe us being where we are now means that someone like him has that freedom, because what is the worst that can happen at the minute? We can't be in a worse situation. So let him try things, because who knows? It's only going to come off once. And he's something for people to worry about. He's an X factor. It's an unusual X factor because he's our right centre back.
Yeah. I think the reality as well is that defenders, if you look at the maturity curve and what needs to happen for that, he's still a very young player. Yes, he's played quite a lot of games, but we're not talking about a 28, 29, 30-year-old here. We're still talking about someone who's still building and maturing. And I think given the right time, I think he could be actually a really good player for us. Really important player as well. So, and as you say, fans are always going to hook into someone who's got that energy, that dynamism, that X factor that brings along, and I think he really does bring that into the team in spades. So yeah, it was really promising, and like you can see that he's starting to move forward, and he's starting to get a bit better with his decision making in terms of when to do it and when not to do it. And I think that's important to call out as well. So yeah, I mean, as we've started, we'll continue talking about the defenses. Obviously, this was a game that, for us, and looking at the points and stuff, was a defensively, I guess, dominated game by both parts. So if you look at the kind of, and again, for the benefits of you, those of you listening as opposed to watching us, I've just put up a little point system based on the Fantasy League, which is just showing that the points allocations and the bonus points were on both teams heavily allocated towards goalkeepers and defenders. Or in the case of Newcastle, they've got Joe Linton in there, who obviously does a lot of mopping up and ball winning as well in their midfield. So you can see, obviously, that's the game. The game was dominated by defences, and I think for us, it was unable to exploit on the counter attack. And from Newcastle, it was their inability to fashion any real meaningful chances. Quite a few crosses and going in, free kicks and bits, but nothing more than that, really. There wasn't many what you would describe as a gilt-edged chances or anything like that, to be honest. Not really that type of game, unfortunately. And then on the screen as well is just a turnaround in form. So you can see previously we'd had 7 losses on the spin, and now we've obviously got 3 draws and 2 wins in that kind of last sequence. So I think what we're seeing here is, and Ed, you talked about the pragmatism and I guess playing based on the position. there is some obviously movement in there. One is a cup game, but you can see there's some kind of focus in there. And Rob talks a lot in his pre and post match conferences around getting his ideas over, getting the players bought into those ideas, and making those changes and adjustments, and looking to get those people moving forward. So yeah, it's a good sign of where we are. Match highlights, and what we're going to do tonight is really focusing on individual players and groupings of players. And one of the things that you both talked about at the start was this kind of battle of Brazil, or the battle for Brazil World Cup places, where you've obviously got Joao and Andre on our side, you've got Joelinton and Bruno on their side, and it kind of was a lot of the battle was in that midfield that obviously got Tonali as well, but that was a real area where the game was contested alongside obviously defences having more control. Thoughts though, I know we kind of talked about that the Andre and the impact. How do you think our midfield, with obviously we had Mon in as well, how do you think our three held up against the Newcastle three generally, bearing in mind they are obviously in Europe and they're pushing towards Champions League? How do you think we held up against those today, Ed?
Yeah, held their own comfortably, didn't they? I think the numbers that you just put up there, Greg, it was, it's a paper between them, isn't it? It was. I think where we have the issue is that I agree wholeheartedly with what Jafo said about Andre, and I think the problem we have here is that we seem to be singing the same hymn sheet in terms of, Andre, he's kind of one-dimensional, but we've needed that one dimension an awful lot. Where I think that I said it, I think in a show where Jafo was hosting, I think we could ask more of these midfielders, and especially now with the emergence of Mane, I think we can do more even with Andre and Joao. I don't think we need to be as negative, even if we pick those two. I think we saw bits and pieces in the second half of Andre trying to break through some passes through the lines, especially when Joao went off. There was a little bit more of there was more forward momentum. But I felt like it didn't feel like a game that Newcastle dominated in midfield. They dominated possession, but I think that's because we let them. I think the only difference I really wanted to point out is you can tell which team is a well-established, comfortable in themselves, know who they are, and a team that are starting to get to know each other is if you look at how the Newcastle players surround the referee, in particular Bruno Guimaraes. That is something we have never done. We've never been very good at being, the sods to the referee. And I think we've always missed out on that, because that does get people decisions, and we saw that throughout the whole of today. I think that's maybe where the difference is. I think the gloves could come off a little bit more in midfield. I think we could ask more of Joao and Andre. Okay,
Jafo, your thoughts on the what I've called the Battle of Brazil at Molineux today? Your thoughts? I know you've talked about Andre and how he sits in, but in terms of lining up in that midfield and how we managed, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I thought pretty good. I don't rate Joelinton as a footballer at all, but it is what it is. I think Bruno Guimaraes and Tonali are fantastic for technicians, and Guimaraes should be involved in that Brazil squad with Joao Gomez in the World Cup. It won't happen because Carlo Ancelotti's a fucking lunatic now, apparently. But it's very, very good. I think Joao Gomez is just so hampered by playing in a double pivot, though, and it's not technically a traditional double pivot, but him not being the base of that and the one who sets the tempo and the one who takes the ball off the defenders first and is the link between midfield and attack and midfield and defence, that it just hampers everything that he does. And it instead of getting 100% of Joao Gomez, we only get 80%. And it annoys me because he's the one who wants to be here. He's the one who should have the armband. He's the one who shows week in, week out why he wants to be a professional footballer. He proves that it's in his blood. It's in everything that he does within life. He shows so much passion for it, and to hamper somebody like that, it irks me a little bit, because the quality and the upturn that we've seen is having him as that tempo, that maestro who sets everything up. And I'd be worried if I was Andre going forward, because John Arias, okay, yeah, he's been in and out of form, but Jean-Luc Bellegarde will be back at some point. He's now another option who will play in a similar sort of position. And now you've got Mane as well. You've got 3 players potentially who trying for 2 positions, and then you've got 2 players going for 1 position, which is going to be the sort of base of that midfield, and they're going to be Andre and Joao Gomez. So I think it's good, but I just think that Joao Gomez today, he looked frustrated, and
He was.
it kills me to see, because everyone knows anything about Wolves and knows anything about Joao Gomez knows that he hates playing in a 3. We go back to the documentary that was done with Wolves when Gary O'Neill was here, and Gary O'Neill was talking to him about it, and he was saying, yeah, I don't like playing in a 3. I don't feel comfortable. I like to play in a 2, or a play as a 1. When he's played as an 8, it just doesn't work for him. He's not that kind of player.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I did observe, Jafar, and you're absolutely right to call this out. He was particularly frustrated and quite vocal today during the game, Joao Gomez. As most people know, I'm a season ticket on the South Bank with my son, and I watched him on some of the corners. And you could see him kind of arguing and shouting. There was a lot. You could see him gesticulating. There was a lot of frustration. I think that started to come out just before he got subbed off, and I'll come on to that in a sec, in terms of our thoughts on that. But you could see, you're absolutely right to call it out. You could see a growing sense of frustration in his players who was getting on as he was going through the half. And I don't know if he was hooked before he got himself booked or worse, but you could see that growing frustration, and actually his frustration when he came off. And I'm going to use that as a nice segue into talking about the substitutions. I know there was a third one later on, but I do want to get your perspective in terms of, were these the right substitutes? So for the benefit of those of you again listening, the 2 substitutions I'm going to talk about is Tolu coming off for Strand Larsen, and obviously Joe coming off for Arias. I'll leave the Hwang one for a sec. So if you can bear with me on that one, gents, I'll pull that one in later on, because I want to ask a slightly different conversation around that one. But for Tolu first, was trying hard, was trying to win balls, but didn't really seem to have the players around him today. Do you think it was just legs looked tired? Do you think that was the one? So Ed, I'll ask you about Tolu, and then Jafo, I'll ask you about the Gomes one. So your thoughts, Tolu, was that the right call with Strand Larsen? Give him some legs, obviously coming off the back of a hat-trick, albeit against weaker opposition. Did you think that was the right call at the time, Ed, in terms of bringing Tolu out?
No, I didn't. I didn't think Tolu looked like he was blowing to me. He looked absolutely fine. I think in the question, I think you hit the nail on the head. The problem we had today is that the way we set up, we had next to no one around him. And I think, as much as I've always slated Hwang Hee-chan on this channel an awful lot, because most of the time he's frustrating, his runs in behind today were constant, especially in the first half, and he was never picked out because of that midfield that we've picked. But I didn't see what is the point in bringing on Strand Larsen. I don't see the point. He's not invested in this project anymore. So for me, he's the wrong decision, regardless of what's going on the pitch, because he's not interested. Warming up in front of us, he's not interested. He's too busy talking to the one of the other lads that was the Norwegian lad. Is it Asuela, something like that? The striker, the backup striker that never plays for Newcastle. He's going through the motions. He's not interested. When he came on the pitch, did he do anything? No. He had that one chance that he could have done more with. He didn't put himself around. I don't see the point in playing a player that's not interested in being part of this project anymore. And I know we've shared in the group, and a lot of people on X that I'm not on have watched, people try and make a case for him. I don't get why people associated with Wolves are trying to make a case for this bloke who is not interested in playing in the old gold anymore. Well, I just don't see the point in him playing. I physically can't stand to watch him play for Wolves, because he is down tools more than Cunha, and we gave Cunha more shit.
Yeah, fine. Perfect. Okay, it's your opinion. That's what we're here for. Yeah. And Jafo, obviously, we talked just a bit about Gomes and his increasing frustration throughout the game, and he swapped for Arias. Now, I think you would have potentially swapped him for Andre, although I'm putting words in your mouth based on what you said at the start. You might have switched him and brought. What are your thoughts on that sub? Can you see what Rob was doing? Also, a question I'm going to throw to you as well is, there's been a lot of discussion around the timing of Rob's subs. Like, it doesn't tend to make early changes, in my opinion, unless things have been going badly and then things have kicked in. But if the game's still fairly close, he tends to leave it maybe a little longer than we've seen with other managers. Do you think that's fair? Do you think it's indecisiveness? And what's your perspective, not just on this particular Gomez, but on his substitutions generally in terms of timing?
I mean, firstly, just comes to Joao Gomez. I think Joao Gomez coming off is probably the right situation, because he was winding himself up. He was getting himself in his own head, because that's the way he is as an individual. He plays with a lot of emotion, and he wasn't the only one today who was frustrated. As Ed already mentioned, Wanky Chan was doing a lot of runnings in behind, and he was obviously very frustrated. And I don't know whether we'll mention it in a little bit, but he was visibly frustrated when he came off, and even punched give a little tap to a seat in the dugout. So it's the right thing to bring him off. I mean, as I say about Andre is very, very good. He's very much a square peg in a square hole in when he plays in that position. But he is very, very slow sometimes at transitions, and then that's his biggest downfall. And it's come around to your other question about Rob Edwards.
Yeah,
it's difficult to put yourselves in the shoes that he's in, and a lot of managers do the same thing. And a lot of fans at other clubs complain about the same issue with late substitutions, and that it's because it's a risk, and it's about risk management. And at the end of the day, and if you're still in the game, you're still in contention with your original game plan. A lot of managers don't like changing it up unless somebody is physically injured, or they cannot continue. It's very, very unlikely that they'll deviate, because people are superstitious for one, and people are very keen to focus on game plans and not changing and not taking massive amount of risks. And it's fairly normal for a manager to do that.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I think the timings were something I've got an issue with, though. You get 3 times you can stop the game for substitutions, and you can make so you can other than stoppage of play for half time, you get 3, and we made the Strand Larsen change, and then no more than 5 minutes later we make the change to bring on take off Joao.
Yeah.
Why are we doing that? You can see that Jose Sarr has obviously picked up some kind of side strain. He's not necessarily 100% when he's kicking the ball out, although he often play acts. You never know about an injury. You never know about, if Newcastle score, we've only got one more change. Those things I think are unforgivable regardless of what's going on. That's just general game management. There, you've got 3 stoppages. Don't use 2 in the space of 5 minutes that are unforced.
I mean, that's a mistake.
Yeah,
it is a mistake. You're totally right. And I think if it was the fact that he was trying to judge if Joao Gomez could continue in his emotional state, then stop the JSL substitution for 4 or 5 minutes as well.
Yep.
And it's a little bit of common sense. And it is a mistake. Hopefully it's not one that repeats itself, but he has made a genuine error there.
Yeah. So the other person that we didn't talk about in terms of the midfield, particularly, obviously we focused a lot on our Brazilian duo, was Mateus Marni, who there was a lot of interest in terms of thinking that I think quite a lot of the South Bank expected him to come off at some point. My opinion, and again, happy for people in the chat to disagree with me, and you two can definitely disagree with me. I just felt he looked a little leggy after about an hour. I think he felt a bit leggy. I think he was trying, but I think that fatigue and things just weren't coming off for him today. And that's okay. Listen, he's a young player. He's going to have ups and downs. He's not going to be, he's going to be a great player, but he's not going to have a great game every game. And it would be unreasonable for us as a fan base to expect that at such a young age. And he's going to try certain things. And part of it's going to be, and you talked a lot about game management. And I think from a player game management perspective, he's got to learn some things as well, and he's learning in the toughest league in the world. So I felt it was a little bit tired. I felt like he could have been one of the options to come out as well. Not necessarily sure who I would choose to have replaced him. I haven't thought that far ahead. But I felt like for me today, I think he's now starting to be more closely monitored. You know, he's had a lot of press noise. The teams are now going to start to make plans for him. But I just felt it was maybe a little bit game too far. Maybe needed a bit of a rest, and maybe it'd be him. He comes in and whatever. I mean, Max has put a good comment in here as well. Maybe that he starts to rotate with Bellegarde. Maybe we see how that plays. That's certainly an option when he's back fit. I'd like to get your perspectives both. I'll go with you, Ed, first on Mateus Mane's performance. And was I, do you agree with me that perhaps he should have dropped out, given us, brought another player in later on, or did Rob, in your opinion, did Rob make the right call keeping him on through the game?
I think playing him the whole game is where I would have gone with it. But what I wouldn't have done is played him for half an hour against Shrewsbury when we didn't need to.
Yeah,
I think the mistake was last week, not this week, with his legs and his tiredness and managing him. I think I don't think he needed to even be in the squad last week. I think he could have been in the stands. We could have paraded him around, given him, the love that he deserves, because he's come in and given us this breath of fresh air and this life that he's breathed into this team. I think we could have made a spectacle of him last week in the stands and kept him completely and utterly fresh this week. He at no point, even if he was on the bench last week, he didn't need to come on when he came on. He came on and did well. We didn't need to play him last week. That would have kept him even fresher for this week. I think, again, we're back to managing players and managing the men. And that's where I think we've got this JSL concern that we still seem to need to stroke his ego. And I'm worried that we're also now worrying about Mane. And he's coming with this massive fanfare that he truly deserves. Yeah. But can we actually treat him like a grown-up and say, you're so important to us that you're not playing this week? Because I need you next week. Yeah.
I mean, I'm just going to get your thoughts as well. I've just lobbed in a quote here from Sean. He was saying, obviously, one of the reasons he would have maybe stayed on is he is that spark of creativity. He has the ability to do something that we don't have in the team at all at the moment. So your thoughts on Mane? I personally, I would have took him off. Ed, you would have kept him on. That's fine for that X factor, for that variable. What was your perspective on Mane? Would you have kept him on as did happen, or would you have gone for another alternative option? And your thoughts on his performance generally?
I think he's a victim of circumstance at the moment. I think he's doing very, very well. He's done great since he's come in. But the fact that Jean-Ric Bellegarde isn't available, Fair Lopez hasn't pulled trees up, and is no longer at the club, is meaning that there's a lot of pressure on. It's a Fabio Silva situation again, where there's nobody to really come in and challenge him, and that's the biggest worry, is that he's going to burn himself out if he plays too many minutes. We can all see that. And today is difficult for him because he's going up against arguably the best left back in the league, Lewis Hall, and then Kieran Trippier has got years of experience of dealing with players. So he needed to be supported by those around him, and I think I'll come back to the Andre thing again. Joel Gomez being the one who's supporting with Hwang and Arokadare means that he's having to do a little bit more. There's a bit more pressure on him to create. Whereas if John Arias is with him, there's more ability to do things like 1-2s and move the ball around a little bit more, and there's less pressure on him to be creative in all situations. So he's a victim of circumstance of not having the players around him to replace him for one, and then being put in a position where he's the only sort of creative outlet because Hwang Hee-chan is a runner and Rokadara is a target man. So what can you do?
Yeah. So what we've talked, I was going to cover the last substitution as well. Sharky, thank you for your comment as always. He's put that Arias and Gomez should have started Mane to come on a sub. He's asked me the question, where is Fair? Now, Fair Lopez was on the bench. I saw him warming up obviously with JSL, who obviously they were club mates with, and Wolfate. From my perspective, I think in the case, to answer your question, Sharky, about Fair, I think the problem was at the time towards the end, Newcastle were dominating a lot of the possession. We were playing on the break. Fer Lopez has got, I think, good football ability, but he doesn't have pace. He's not going to stretch on the counter, and we were playing on the counter attack. And I think because of that, and how he handles things defensively, I think that's why Fer Lopez didn't come on. I think if we were losing 1-0 and we were chasing the game, then he maybe would have come on then, but he ultimately didn't. So I think that for me, to answer your question, Sharky, is why Fer Lopez didn't come on. I think at the moment I'm a bit concerned with a lot of the noise about some of these players being asked to be loaned out. So obviously Fer Lopez has been one. We've had other players that have been linked with loan moves away, and I'm a bit concerned that we don't really have the numbers in the squad to justify loaning players out at the moment, not unless we brought more players in. I think that for me would be a big thing. What I'd cover as well is there's two more players I want to focus in on. First one I'm going to focus in on is the third substitution, which was Rodrigo Gomez. Now, he came on for Hwang in a more advanced position. Now, I put a poll out on X, and thank you to everyone who voted on that. He was selected by a storming majority. So 61% of people, when I suggested who would you have at right wing back on the game today, so when I asked that on Friday, 61% said Rodrigo, 25% said Pedro Lima, 9% said Jackson, whose performance we'll come on to in a sec, and 4% said other, which was mainly Doc, and I completely forgot to put him on there. That's my fault. So everyone has suggested Rodrigo should go in on the right wing back slot. However, Rob brought him in as more of an attacking player, did make an impact. Obviously, got the booking. I think it was Botman that brought him down as a counter-attacking threat. So the question is does Rob see him actually as more of an attacking player, maybe even much further forward and more centrally than we thought to support that? Or do you think it was just a case, like I said, we were playing Newcastle, we were playing on the counter, and he just thought, horses for courses, going back to your statement early on, Ed, about pragmatism, and he's gone, I need a player that can run the ball, or he's got some pace to attack on the counter-attack, and that's what it is. Your thoughts? Is it something we should try and persist with Rodrigo Gomez, maybe as a more of a further forward player, or do you think it was just a one-off for that particular game?
I think he genuinely can play both positions quite comfortably. I think he could easily be an X factor off the bench against most teams. I think away from home, I'd probably start him because of his pace on the break. And I think at home, I think he's one of those players that we could bring off the bench to play either instead of Hwang or Mane or Jackson or I've forgotten that. Who's our left back? Have I forgotten that now?
Hugo Bueno.
He can come on for any of those, because of his football and ability is so pure. He's good on the ball, decent with both feet, but his strength is how quick he is both with and without the ball. We can utilise that either in sort of a wide 10 or in the wing back positions. I think he's an X factor that we could have. We could have two different plans for him. I would play him either place, but I think Jackson today had a very good game defensively. I think if I would have been on X, I'd have picked Rodrigo Gomez to start as our right wing back going forward. But I think today's performance, with Jackson, I think shows why people persist with him, managers persist with him, because of his pace and how that gets him out of trouble, or gets us out of trouble, I should say, not necessarily him. But I think Rodrigo Gomez off the bench, the age he is now, I think he could accept that and come on as a real X factor, and he could start from half time anywhere up to the end of the match, and he should be pretty happy with that.
Yeah. Your thoughts, Jafai, on Rodrigo Gomez playing further up? Also, his general performance. I mean, again, we talked a lot about Mosquera and the fact that, people love him because he's got his energy and stuff like that. And for me, Rodrigo Gomez is exactly the same. Plays with a smile on his face, plays with energy, intensity, and passion, and you can see that in spades. Thoughts on, first of all, playing him in a slightly more advanced position, and second of all, his general performance and engagement.
Yeah, I think he suffers from being a utility player. He can play 2-3 different positions. He's very, very good in a lot of areas. I'd probably come back into the poll as well that you said about you put on Twitter. I disagree with that wholeheartedly. I think Anthony Gordon against Rodrigo Gomez would have been football suicide. He's a very, very good, and you saw that even against Jackson, he had a couple of moments where he put it past him, and if he'd have been a bit more lucky, Gordon had been in against and had a shot away or got a chance away. So let's not confuse let's not confuse enthusiasm with footballing ability.
Yeah,
he's a very good footballer. Yeah, great, and he works really hard. But he's a small guy, and he's going up against one of the better wingers in the league. Let's pull our heads out of our asses a little bit.
It's an interesting one though, right? Because whilst I was on the way back, I listened in on a few Newcastle fans, and I took a quick opportunity before we joined these to get their consensus and their thoughts, and I put aside all the ones, it's like, oh, biggest disaster ever, we've lost to the worst Premier League team, putting all those clickbait reviews to one side, because you hear them all the time, don't you? It's like the ones with Liverpool yesterday. And so I don't want to talk about other teams. We need to focus on our team. But when you listen to the considered analysis, shall we say, he really didn't come out very favourably today. Anthony Gordon really didn't. Him and Tonali really did come in for some stick from the Newcastle fans today. In terms of his performance, they said he was ineffective. They said that it resulted in Harvey Barnes, who they're saying is a player in better form than him at the moment. That that he's been moved out the way to accommodate Gordon, and didn't reward that with a performance. Now, question is, and this is what I'm kind of building the point off what you just said, Jafo, how much of that is down to Jackson's performance? Now, for all of us, and again, we've got the benefit now of looking at this in hindsight. We're obviously, the fans are looking at it on the poll based on him having another stinker against Shrewsbury, right? When he didn't really have a lot to do, but didn't do a lot, contribute a lot going forward. Obviously, he operated more as a cover, and that was demonstrated a number of times with his pace. So thoughts, in terms of that, obviously they're saying Anthony Gordon's out of form, but you're saying that was probably one of Jackson's best performances in a Wolves shirt today. He feels like he's now earned his place to continue.
Yeah, I mean, form's temporary when it comes to a lot of these players. Let's not forget that he's Anthony Gordon plays for Newcastle United because he's a very, very good footballer. He will turn around. He will get a good performance at some point, and then he'll be in a rich vein of form again. With Jackson, okay, Jackson's struggling, but you're looking at Tachua, he's played as a right back at Hellas Verona. He's not wing back. He's not really a system that he's that too accustomed to, and especially when he has played as a wing back in Italy, is that they are reserved anyway. Italian defenders aren't supposed to be expressive and going forward and creating chances. So okay, he can do more, but I bring you back to what you were saying earlier on about, okay, bringing in players like Andre is playing for like the draw and playing a little bit more reserved, is having someone who, is going to be more competent as a fullback than going forward. Do you really want to take the chance of having someone who's going to be marauding 20, 30 yards at the pitch when he's in a position to, if there is a quick turnover, get in behind and use that pace to stop a counter-attack like we saw several times today? And let's say he did very, very well. Let's not forget that too.
No, that's fine. So Ed, I'm going to throw that over to you, but in the context of the comment you made earlier about the pragmatism. So what we're hearing, what Jafo suggested, and it's understandable that Jackson's a pragmatic decision to make us more solid because he's more of a full-back, playing wing-back than a wing-back. Is based on what you were saying earlier, is that the part of what you would see as a problem going forward? Or, should we be actually allowing, a different player to go in there and be more, who's maybe more naturally inclined as an attacking outlet, bearing in mind our wing-backs historically have been quite a big attacking outlet for us, knowing that actually that may open up some defensive fragility. I know it's a balancing act, and there isn't a silver bullet answer to this. But based on what you were saying before, what's your perspective on Jackson? Obviously, he's done us a solid today defensively. I think that's absolutely fair statement. But I guess, are we robbing Peter to pay Paul? And there is no easy answer to that. But is that part of it? What's your perspective?
Yeah, I think with Jackson, I think he's a perfectly serviceable right wing back, and I say that without trying to, downplay his abilities. I think where we have the issue is with the setup, especially the setup we had today that we've talked about with the two holding midfielders.
Yeah,
we need him to be a creative outlet, and that's what he's not good at. So either we need to pick a system that means that we don't need the right wing back to be anything other than a decoy. Let's face it, Nelson Semedo, we all loved him. I thought he was fantastic. Couldn't really cross a ball, didn't get any assists, didn't really score any goals. But his ability to get down the line, to cause issues for more creative players in the middle was how we used him, whereas we used Aït-Nouri as sort of a left wing back that would come in, a bit like we have with Hugo Bueno. But I think where we had the problem today is Jackson, obviously, the running joke is he goes backwards when he gets forward. Well, the reason is he's going backwards because there's no one in front of him. Because we didn't have Arias, did we, for him to be sort of even a sideways pass to open up and do something with. I think the problem we have is either Jackson plays right wing back with a more attacking midfield, or we have to try and work out a way of either making him more useful in attack, or we need to play someone else as right wing back. We can't do both because there's pragmatism and then there's essentially nullifying a whole side of our pitch, and especially at home.
So, gents, who would you give your man of the match to today? I had a quick look on the BBC Sport website. Actually, the highest match rating there. No, actually, I won't spoil it and tell you what they went with. Who would you go with as your Wolves man of the match today? Ed first, and then Defoe, I'll pop you.
It can only be Yerson Mosquera.
Okay, perfect. Defoe?
I think everyone would go with Mosquera, but I think Santi Bueno deserves
was brilliant
a good mention as well. So yeah, I'll give Santi his flowers.
Marsh really well, Santi. He was understated performance.
Is that part though due to the fact that he's now playing in the middle, which may be a more natural position for him, whereas before he's been shipped on the right or even on the left? Do you feel that he's actually found more of a natural home there?
Yeah. I mean, you look at the lack of pace that he has. When he's struggled, Santi, is when he's been run at and he's had to backtrack and he's been put under a lot of pressure, which is why he always came in for a lot of criticism, and why that people thought Doherty should play is because Doherty is able to handle that. But when he's in the centre, that we saw that with Conor Cody. He was slow as anything. He was like a snail running in mud, but you don't need to be fast to be there. So it's about having the right people in the right position. Right. And absolutely. I think,
Now, interestingly, and Lost and Maximus have both commented on it. The actual player of the match based on the BBC, the average ratings, was actually Hugo Bueno. He actually got the man of the match there. And I just wanted to keep that to one side because he's a player that I think is building into the team for me. I think he's gaining in confidence. So before we kind of move on just to the general tie-ups, your thoughts on Hugo's performance as well? He was the one that was voted on the BBC. I know that can be sometimes polluted with other fans and all sorts of stuff. Your thoughts on Hugo Bueno's performance and the fact that he seems to now have that left back slot or left wing back slot as his own at the moment, Ed?
Yeah, even though I couldn't remember his name earlier. Yeah, no, he is a product of when we were last in a hole and we had to play someone like Mane is right now, and he's proven himself to be a more than serviceable left wing back. I like him a lot. He loves a step over, but he gets the ball in the box, and he had probably our best chance as well, cutting in when he played right wing back for a minute. So, and of course, he's one outlandishly overblown Jordan Pickford save away from getting us 3 points against Everton as well. He's a very tidy, very good footballer, and I think what you see with Hugo Bueno is the fact that, unlike Jackson, more established footballers aren't scared to give him the ball. Him and Krejci, sometimes they seem like they're dicking about with the ball at the back. But in recent weeks, we've been not getting away with it. We've been playing the lines better. Whereas, as 2 or 3 months ago, we wouldn't have been doing that. But he's trusted by his teammates, and I don't think he get a greater vote of approval when Premier League players such as Andre Joao Gomez, people like that have been there and done it and played for their national teams, if they're willing to give you the ball in a difficult situation and trust you with it, I think that says everything.
Yeah. Your thoughts, Jafar? I mean, obviously he's been on a similar path to Mosquera, actually, if you look back. Both of them have been out on loans, both playing into Europe for various teams. Is this a case of actually the loan system, dare I say, working in this case? That they've both been out of experiences, had some good game time elsewhere, and are now starting to put that experience to use in the Premier League?
Yeah, I mean, you look at the quality of the sides that these players have gone on loan to. They're not going to a Shrewsbury town. They're not going to Tipton. They're not going to, no hopers. They're in Villarreal with Mosquera. And with Hugo Bueno, who were playing in the Champions League football. He's playing against the very best, and he's being put under pressure because he's not playing for a team who's got a lot of possession. He's going to be under pressure, and pressure is what made, to use a silly statement, pressure is what makes diamonds. And we've seen now that him and Yerson are getting to an age now where they are developing. They're becoming more of a proper adults, where there's a lot of responsibility on them. They've been playing professional football for quite a few years now. They've been at Wolves for quite a few years now. They're going to be seen to be the person who leads by example. So there's got to be a lot of pressure on him now to show why he should stay in the side, because as we talk about pragmatism as earlier, and Ed's been Ed's word of the day, pragmatism, and has been important. David Muller-Wolf, he's pragmatic. He's a very, very good athlete. He does simple things well. He doesn't do the hard things very well.
He's functional.
And functional is the perfect word to describe him. So Hugo Bueno has the task of not being functional. He needs to be able to do these moments that you talk about with step overs or getting the ball into the box, or doing these, being creative. He needs to do that very well, because if he doesn't, he has a 7 out of 10, a Kevin Foley sitting in the background ready to come and step in whenever he messes up.
So I guess just before we move on to the review of the Premier League fixtures this weekend and the results that have happened, I guess let's quickly just cover on the transfers, because there's a lot of people in the chat saying, where are all the incoming players? What's going on? There's obviously all the news at the moment is going outwards rather than inwards. That potentially is forcing situations like we don't have another striker other than Strand and Tolu really to play up at the 9. So we're kind of stuck. Obviously, Fletcher Holman was, some people were talking about very briefly. Obviously, he's gone off on a permanent deal anyway. So looking at incomings, it's been awfully quiet. So I guess questions for you guys is, any thoughts on that? Obviously, it's not great. Any thoughts on that? And if we were to focus in on one position we should bring in based on our current, where we are at the moment from a team perspective, what position would you be saying, right, that is the priority position we should go for? Jafar, I'll go to you first. Where do you think, your thoughts on our transfer business or lack of? And then just where would you be in terms of what position would you go for? If you could say, right, I can get you a player, Jafar, but what position would you be pushing for?
For sure. I mean, to convince somebody to come to a side who's cut adrift, who has been playing as terribly as Wolves have, you would need to be some kind of mystical wizard. And I think it's very, very difficult to convince anyone to come and join a Premier League side who they're only going to be potentially, very, very high chance that they're only going to be a Premier League player for the next 6 months, and then they'll be in the Championship again. Because who's going to want to sign somebody who's just signed into a brand new contract 6 months ago? And as on your other question, I think Vitor Pereira wanted it in the summer, his wingers, and I think we lack pace as a side. And I think Pedro Neto and Adama Traore, somebody who's able to carry the ball up the pitch and cover 10 yards very, very quickly, changes the tempo for us. And I think we don't have enough players who are able to change the tempo on the pitch.
Yeah. Just okay. Let's go back to that, the comment around the transfers. I think for me, you're absolutely right. Permanent signings, yeah. But you might see players who are in Premier League squads that haven't been getting game time, that might see Wolves as an opportunity to come on loan for 6 months through to the end of the season, get some regular game time, and use us essentially, which is what a lot of our signings have been, as a shop window to get themselves in for another deal in this. Do you know what I mean? So I think you're right. I think for permanent deals, unless it's a player that's coming out of a lesser league, whether that's the Championship or someone like, you know what I mean, who can kind of accept that there's going to be a bounce, or from a overseas, you know, like a less strong league, which, let's be honest, that's where a lot of our players have come from this summer. Then I think you're probably looking at loan players based on that. But your perspective is, if you could pick one, you'd go for a winger, a ball carrying, pacing winger to essentially bring us up the pitch.
Yeah, 100%. I think, coming to your other point about players bringing in a loan, I think we're not a charity as a football club, and we shouldn't be giving game time to developing other people's players and putting other people in the shop window. If you don't want to come here and you don't want to be here, we've got enough young players that we can be developing. I'd rather go down to the Championship with players who want to be here next season, and instead of having potential mercenaries who've not been playing for the Premier League clubs. I mean, I'm pretty strong on that, because, you know, I'd rather have the long-term intentions and hopes of Wolves at heart than worrying about some nobody who's not playing for Newcastle or Liverpool or something.
Fair. That's a fair comment. Ed, your thoughts? Lack of transfers, and also, what position would you be plumping for if you could get a player now? What position would you be looking to get in?
Well, I think the lead's been buried a little bit, hasn't it? With Rob saying a few weeks ago that we're going to have to sell to buy. So it probably means that we will replace, if we can, anyone we sell. Where we should be looking is exactly where I think Javo just talked about, the Championship. We need to offer someone a chance to take the step up now, to have 6 months in the Premier League, in the vain hope, fingers crossed, it's, you know, the maths isn't done yet. Who knows? But I think we've overlooked buying from within. I mean, where did Semenyo come from? And now he's, you know, the starting right winger at Man City. There are players there, and you just have to have the coaches in place, which I do think we do have the coaches in place to develop players. I would say if JSL goes, and I bought some fireworks when Manetzi went, but I've kept some just in case JSL goes, and I'll set them off as well. So if we sell him, it will have to be a striker, because we're asking too much of players who can play up front in a pinch. In someone like Hwang, that will play him out of position, and he will get more and more pelters that he probably doesn't deserve up front. So if we sell JSL, would need to be a striker. If not, then if you look at the bench today, it's lacking attacking intent on the pitches, and it's either a winger, it's a number 10. We're okay at the back, bizarrely, for a team that's bottom. That back three, if we were in a better situation, if we were 14th, we could be arguing now that back three with a keeper would be set for the next 4 seasons. Santi by that point is 31, and that's probably when we'd need to worry about where are we going next with this back three. We could be set with Krejci, Mosquera, and Santi, the way they all complement each other really well. So Javo's right. We need someone that gets in behind. We need to stretch teams if we're going to do anything. Just carry on bloodying some noses. We need people to do the runs Hwang's doing, but do something at the end of them. Yeah,
perfect. Thank you. Yeah, couldn't argue with either of those points. Some really good, interesting insights there. Thank you both. Let's finish the review show on a slightly wider note, or slightly lighter note. Looking at the results through from the weekend. As part of the preview show, there was a lot of discussion. I think we talked about the home banker, the game that everyone was going to put their acca on. I think that was Liverpool, and obviously they conspired to draw against Burnley. And obviously we did talk a little bit about the Nuno derby with West Ham, obviously grabbing a very last gasp win at Spurs, which has kind of kept them slightly in touch with Forest after that result. Your perspective on the weekend's results, and one fixture you want to call out as either a bit of an outlier or something you weren't expecting? There's a few in there, Ed.
I think all these results just confound how gutted I feel about the fact that we threw away the summer again. Because look at this weird league that we're in. We should be nowhere near bottom with this team. I'd argue we have a better starting 11 than those 3 teams above us. It's a basket case of a club we were at the start of the season. and thank you, Fosun, for that. I'm Sunderland against Palace. We obviously the mess that Palace have gotten themselves into with the way they're handling things at the minute, and it's a weird West Ham Wolves vibe that they've got going on the last few years, selling their best players, not necessarily replacing them with people that you've heard of, and hoping that a good manager, a bit like what we had with Nuno, and a good manager and a good system will keep you not only afloat but keep you relevant. So that's interesting. I find Sunderland have been a breath of fresh air. That when you watch them play, they are just they're just a fun team to watch play. They'll try something. And I think I heard the guys on the preview show. Liverpool at home is not a banker at the minute. Whoever they play, they're a weird team. We saw. We were just starting out trying to get our house in order, and we gave them a run for their money in the second half. So, and it's always nice to see Villa lose.
Your thoughts, Jafar? Interesting in it. You can, for those of you who can see on the video, we've circled, so you can actually see none of the bottom 5 lost either this weekend. A few draws in there, a couple of wins. So, like you say, it's just a bit of a bonkers league. Is it also with players away in AFCON and the run of fixtures over the Christmas period maybe having an influence here? Who knows? I'm just speculating. Your thoughts? Any particular game you want to call out from the weekend?
I mean, it's difficult. You're always going to have weekends like this where the sides who are struggling are going to pick up points, and you're going to be having. It's a Premier League at the end of the day. The Premier League is the most competitive of the top 5 leagues. As in terms of results out there, I think the Man United game is a surprise. Yeah, they could have won that game a lot more easily. I mean, they had the 2 disallowed goals. I think it shows to me how much of a boys' club Man United is, and what I mean by that is they have a very, very good bunch of individuals. They're very talented players, but none of them want to pull in line with what a manager wants to do. And I think Amorim just got the shitty end of the stick there, like Jose Mourinho did, like a lot of other players, where they went in and they thought, I can rip this out. And I think it's a rotten club. I think it's a terribly rotten club. And since Fergie left, I mean, there's never been anyone there who could have took control and like unlike Lou Van Gaal maybe, but it's someone who's really, really run with it and actually changed everything from top to bottom. I think it's a massive surprise to see them actually get a result, but on paper, maybe not.
They're the opposite to the anti-dickheads group, aren't they? A lot of Man United players you wouldn't want to share a pint with. I think that's the problem, isn't it? They're all so full of themselves and this weird Ferguson spectre that looms over them. I mean, it's funny as a 90s kid. It's hilarious watching how bad they are at times. But Man City were terrible as well because Pep's a ball fraud.
But, I mean, let's just open that up just widely and just very quickly. There does seem to be, for me, with a lot of these fans now, and I don't know if it's just the way that the football's presented, but there's this entitlement piece. Like, I listen to the Spurs fans. And again, I'm putting all the wild internet clickbait characters to one side, yeah? But there's this underlying sense of I turn up and I expect to be, entertained and, all of this. And we should be doing this. We should have this. No, it doesn't work like that. It never has worked like that. You might have thought it did because you've always been able to spend more money than other clubs. But it just doesn't work like that. It shouldn't work. It doesn't work like that. It shouldn't work like that. And for me, it's just funny because I'm listening to all these Liverpool fans. Yesterday, it's like, when they were winning the league, he was the greatest thing. He was the next successor and all this. And now they've had a more difficult season. And let's be honest, they've got, he's having to go through some big changes. There's a reason why Klopp left when he did, not being disrespectful, but you could see, he got a squad and there were a lot of players on the downward turn. Van Dijk was getting older. Salah's getting older. They were then demanding the continuation of the contracts. And let's be honest, the fans made sure that the club was pushing to give them those contracts. So, it's then funny because then they're now complaining that Slot can't do that when he's trying to oversee quite a big change. And yes, they've spent money, but it does feel like, and Man United are part of that, where we're Man United, so we should be top. We should be this. We should be that. And he's like, I think you guys need to.
I left a group chat with loads of different football fans a couple of weeks ago when Arsenal fans in there were having a mental breakdown because Aston Villa dared to play football against them and win. And they were still at that point 9 points clear, 8 points clear. And they were like, oh, we're going to throw it away. Oh, it's really difficult being 8 points clear at the top. Yeah. How dare you lose a game? And they're doing the exact same thing about drawing with Forest yesterday.
Yeah,
you are playing in the Premier League. This is why it's the most, as Jafo called it, it's not the best league in the world, but it's definitely the most competitive. You could argue one or the other. But that's the thing, isn't it? Teams like Burnley will try and spoil the party. Teams like Nottingham Forest will do anything to hold on to their Premier League survival, to the point that they cheated a few years ago, and let's never let that go away, and got away with it. So and that's just what it is. That's just life. That's just life in the Premier League. They all need to grow up a little bit, and not because Wolves are 20th, but because you need to remember who you are and where you are and where you are in the food chain. And Man United, for instance, you're not there anymore, and you're not going to be for a while.
Very true. I mean, the thing is, I'm a numbers guy. I always think about things in the perspective of numbers, and I think you just have to look at it that Man United's fan size is going to be 10 times bigger than us, so they're going to have 10 times more dickheads at the very bottom. Wolves are still going to have 10%. 10%, so 10% of the fan base is dickheads. Yeah. That 10% is basically 100% of our fan base is complete utter arseholes, and then they flood themselves on social media and they shout the loudest. It's the way society is now. And it ties in quite nicely to what you said you didn't want to link it to, and that's the social media side, because for every Wolves fancast, there's 10 Man United, there's 10 Liverpool channels who are just regurgitating and pumping out the same shit, so people are feeding on it, so they believe they're on bullshit.
It's the problem you've got is it's the like what you see now. It's the clickbait. It's the let's come up with a witty remark, and then I'm going to shout it, and I'm going to shout it, and I'm going to keep shouting it. And I'm going to throw my hands around, and I'm going to say, "Oh, he needs to go tonight. He needs to do this. They need to have, And you're like, "Come on, have a." And I think that's just something, for me, that it's a bit of a shame that you're right. You're absolutely right, Jafar. And I'm going to turn this into a Sunday night rant if I'm not careful. But it's just a shame that people can't make considered opinions, and those that speak the loudest get the most attention. When in reality, what they're saying a lot of the time is just drivel. Anyway, on that Sunday night rant, philosophical note,
still unbeaten.
Still unbeaten. Yeah. Damn it, you took my line. We are still unbeaten. We are unbeaten in 5. We are unbeaten in 2026. Ed, Jafo, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Thank you very much for your analysis and insights. Always a pleasure and always good to get your perspective. Thank you to everyone in the chat tonight that's joined us, giving us your comments and your feedback and your interactions, and it's really good. And we'll join you at the next episode, which will be a preview to one of the kind of clubs that we've just been talking about, which is Manchester City. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your weekend or the rest of your day, whenever you're listening to this. And last but not least, up the Wolves.